Hi, everybody. Welcome to the BC Wheelchair Sports Show. I'm your host, Nate, and today I am very privileged and thankful to be joined by soon to be four-time Paralympian. He's a Paralympic gold medalist. He's also a crucial board member for BC Wheelchair Basketball. It's Bo Hedges, the pride of 1-1 BC. How are you doing, Bo?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. So the first question, that we always ask our guests on this show is, how did you first get involved in your sport?
So I got started when I had my accident. I was in GF Strong after falling out of a tree, broke my back in that accident. And so at GF Strong, they introduced you to a bunch of different sports, and wheelchair basketball was one of them. And I liked it immediately and was able to kind of start a team back in Fort St. John, and kind of just progressed from there. 25 years later, here we are.
Nice. And I know in those early days, you had a quite, successful junior career. You went to two world junior championships where you won gold in both. What were those experiences like, and did they help set the table for you going forward in your senior career?
Yeah, definitely. They were amazing experiences. And the first one, especially in 1997, the group of guys that we had on that team really were a unique set. And we came together really well and just had a great time. We were all young. There's a bunch of us that were like 17 years old, and just had a great chemistry. And after doing that and winning and being with that group, it kind of set the stage for me to be wanting more and to be part of the national team for the next while after that.
I know from speaking with you before and from reading some things about you, for you, it took you a while to break into the senior men's national team, if I'm not mistaken. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that experience was like, trying to break through in the mid 2000s and just, continuing coming back and improving your game?
Yeah, sure. It took me basically the first year I tried out for the national team. The senior national team was 1999, and I didn't actually crack the squad until 2007. So I basically got cut every year in between then and then. There was a lot of ups and downs, and but for me, it was I guess around 2004 when I didn't make the Athens team. That's when I really thought about whether that was enough for me and whether I should do other things. And so I went and I finished up my degree at UNBC in Prince George.
Yeah.
Once I got that done and under my belt, I kept thinking and kept wanting to play wheelchair basketball and feeling that I hadn't really gave it my all and really accomplished what I wanted in that field. And so I moved to Vancouver shortly after that. After I finished my degree, right around 2006. And put that time in there with that great group of players that was in the Lower Mainland at that time. And that's when I cracked the team in 2007 and then went to games.
Now, I'm happy you mentioned that great group of players in the Lower Mainland, because this is the BC Wheelchair Sports Show. And one of the things we're doing on another series is talking a lot about the history of wheelchair sports in BC and some of the great individuals and teams. And with training in BC and being part of that group in the 2000s, you were part of a really strong core out here with guys like Richard Peter, Ross McDonald, Eric Hakering, Jamie Borisoff, that won a number of national championships and all seemed to really push each other. So what was that experience like for you, and how do you think that helped you in taking your game to the next level?
Yeah, it definitely played a huge role in that transition from me being a fringe national team player to the London Games, where I was a key piece within that lineup. And when I was in Prince George, there's a lot of great players there when I first went there, and they really pushed me as well. But as I kind of finished my time there, they were getting older, had families, had other commitments, and were kind of moving on.
Yeah.
So yeah, you mentioned a bunch of the guys in Vancouver at the time when I moved down there, but there was also like Brian McLennan was there, and was living down there as well. And so Don Turner was still in the city. And so we'd go out to practice and there'd be 10, 12 guys that were all like super, super athletic, really keen and just pushing each other, like you said. And so every practice 2-3 times a week was like a full-on 5-on-5 scrimmage with like some of the best players in the world, and so you just can't help but get better in those situations.
Nice. And now you mentioned, you cracked the squad in Beijing. What was that first Paralympic experience like for you?
It was a blur. I was there and I was trying to do what I could, but there's just so much going on and trying to manage the team aspect. And we were trying to go for that third gold medal in 3 Paralympics right at that point. So there's some external pressures and you're trying to do what you could as a rookie on the team. But yeah, it was a lot. And I just remember after the games were over, and I hadn't realized it before, but Bear and I were sitting around watching TV in the village, and it just felt like this giant weight was off my shoulders. Like the games was over. Like you didn't realize how much pressure I'd been feeling to perform. And obviously we wanted to win the gold, but silver, looking back, was still an amazing accomplishment for that team.
Yeah, fantastic. And now that team was, quite a veteran team, very similar to London. What was it like for you being around those guys in your first games? And was there anything that you learned from the veterans on the team that you were able to take into your second games in London, where you really emerged? Like you said, you were a key piece. You went from playing, I just looked this up actually, about 8 minutes a game in Beijing to playing 25 minutes a game in London. So was there anything that you learned from the vets that helped you with that jump?
Yeah, I think all along the vets helped me a lot. Like all those years I was trying out, they were still helping me and develop. And so when I went to the Beijing games and played those 8 minutes, as you say, and obviously had a little bit of an impact, but just saw what other players on the Canadian team were able to do and what other players around the world were able to do, and what kind of impact you could have as a mid-class player. I just took that as a personal challenge over the next 3 years, just to train my butt off and change my body type. I did a lot of work at the Performance Institute there in Vancouver with Steve Ramsbottom, and he just I went from weighing around 200 pounds down to about 170 pounds in those 3 years leading into Rio, or not Rio, sorry, into London. And yeah, and just it allowed me to play with the best players in the world.
Great. And so London, obviously, London's known as a pretty big Paralympics, and for a number of reasons. It seemed like the profile of that games was a lot higher than previous Paralympics, and everyone I've talked to said London did a pretty phenomenal job of making it into a real show. But also, you guys were able to win another gold medal. So talk to me about what that experience was like and what it meant to you to really get to break out on the international stage at that time.
Yeah, London was like the coming together of a lot of things that allowed it to kind of break out. Obviously, England itself and the city embraced the Paralympics in a way that could showcase it, but also with technologies as well, right? All the social media platforms that just started to emerge. People could watch the games from wherever they were at, right? And which even in Beijing was so much harder, even then, that sort of stuff. So yeah, the world could access it. The London organizing committee did a great job of promoting it. And then, yeah, for us to come out on that big stage with a lot of the same core that had been through the 4 Paralympics before that, right? It was pretty special moment for us all to kind of pull it in together. And some of the younger guys like Chad Jasmine, Tyler Miller, myself, Abdi Dini, took a step forward, right? And then obviously Pat was still in his prime, and so we were able to put a team effort together and get back on the top of the podium, which was, and like I mentioned, amazing and a very special moment.
Are there any specific moments or specific games from London that really stick out in your mind as like incredibly memorable?
Yeah, there's, I mean, they were all pretty special, obviously. But the beating GB right in the semifinal on the home court, I mean, that was pretty memorable. That was probably our best game of the tournament, like where we kind of peaked. Great job of coming through the whole tournament and just kind of continuously getting better game to game. And I think, yeah, that game there was basically where the group peaked. And then we were able to hold on to that and take it into the gold medal game against Australia. And it's always a battle against Australia, and they played us really. We've had many of those over the years against them. So that was, again, special to beat them.
No, in that game with the Aussies seemed like it was a real defensive battle. Nobody was shooting incredibly fantastic, but it was just whoever was able to grind it out. And you guys seem to have that little bit of an extra edge in that final push there. So obviously phenomenal to bring home another goal for Canada. And just continue to add to the incredible legacy of Canadian wheelchair basketball. For anybody watching who doesn't know, Canada has a very long history in wheelchair basketball and has historically done very well, especially on the women's side since the early 90s and on the men's side since about 2000. You've been pretty consistent medal threats with the slight exception of the next games that we'll get to, but I'm sure there's some silver linings there. Now in Rio, it was definitely a very different team for you guys. You had a lot of new faces, a lot of younger faces with a few vets that were still hanging around, including you there. And what was, obviously I know the results didn't go quite how you guys wanted, but what was that experience like for you, being a real veteran on the team and trying to help the younger guys come along and develop?
Yeah, that was obviously a challenging few years there with a bunch of the guys retiring after London, and then bringing all the young guys in and trying to get them kind of to where they needed to be and help them learn how to prepare properly for the games. And so we went into those games as a young group, and the world had changed as well. It was beginning to change. Like wheelchair basketball was beginning to change coming out of the London games. The depth was starting to become deeper across the board in all the different zones. And so I think in Rio, it really showed evidence that any team like Spain got to the final, right? And that's the time a team other than GB, Canada, US, Australia had been in the top four at the Paralympic quite some time. And so we as a young team coming into that, and not really quite knowing what to expect because of all the rookies, it was a learning experience for sure for the group. And obviously we could have, maybe should have won a game here or there, but it just didn't come out that way. But I think it definitely bodes well as using it as what I've kind of said is that learning piece going into these Tokyo games here in the next month.
Cool. And now you segued perfectly into my next set of questions, which are all about the games that are coming up in just over 2 weeks. What is the preparation for these Tokyo games been like for you and the team?
Well, it's been a really long quad. It's almost 5 years long now. So that has been, it's challenging even for a veteran guy, right? Because you've been through it a bunch of times and you kind of have this 4-year plan in your mind and what you're doing, right? And so come last February, March there, when things started to unravel, I was in year 3.5 of it. And so then you got to figure out, what am I actually going to do for about a year now or 6 months to reset all of this? And so that actually a new challenge for me to kind of figure out what I needed to do. And then once I got to the fall, I just kind of reset it again as that preparation, right? But as that year out preparation. But yeah, it's unique. It's unique for me as an individual, but it's also unique for the team and the circumstances we were under in terms of the restrictions and not being able to have any sort of contact till after Christmas, and all the rapid tests and PCR tests that we've had to do in the last 8 months.
Never fun.
Yeah, I've probably done 80 to 90 rapid tests and 10 to 20 PCR tests since Christmas, and just to make sure that we could continue on and keep playing and keep having contact and try and prepare. And then with the travel restrictions and stuff, it'll be unique in that we haven't got a chance to go play any teams beforehand, so we're kind of going in blind. But then also nobody's seen us play, and a little bit of an underdog mentality right now in terms of obviously we still have one of the best players in the world in Pat, but we haven't done a lot on the international stage, won a few games here and there, but there's a lot of other teams that would be ahead of us in the predictions at this point. So we got nothing to lose right now.
Yeah. So you mentioned how the depth in the world has really improved, and I would definitely have to agree with you. Looking at results, over the past few years, it seems like every major competition, there's a new country that kind of pops up and announces, "Hey, we're competitive too, and we're here." So what's it been like for you as someone who's been in the sport for so long to see wheelchair basketball grow so much?
Well, it's amazing for me to see it actually. Like the parity across the world, around the world is awesome. There's players from Iran at the World Championship had a big run and ended up in the top four. So to see those types of things, it's great. It's definitely challenging when you're on the wrong side of that parity
Yeah.
to them, right? So but it just pushes each individual to like train that much harder and really showcases that this is one of the most elite sports in the world, right, as wheelchair basketball. And that yeah, there's really good teams that didn't qualify, like Argentina, the Dutch, Poland. They're all world-class teams with world-class players, and they don't get to go. And it's just an extreme honor to be able to represent Canada at the Paralympic Games.
Yeah. And I like how you mentioned training, because for the past few years, you've actually been training, out at the National Academy in Toronto, centralized with the team. So what's that been like for you, and how do you think that's helped your training and your game develop?
Yeah, for me, it's done a great job of just containing everything in one facility. So when I lived in Vancouver, I'd be practicing at Douglas College and then running over to the Oval to get some shots in one afternoon, and then Performance Institute. And it was good, but you're just kind of commuting all over the city to get your stuff in, plus working. Whereas here in Toronto, I've been able to get everything in that one stop. And so you cruise out there in the morning, you get your lifts in, you get on court, do team practice, do that sort of thing. And so I really appreciate the convenience of the whole center and having that staff there to help me all the time. And then, yeah, there's a bunch of young guys here that I can train with. They push me. There's a certain standard that I need to bring every day and bring that energy and bring that leadership, and that motivates me. It's a little harder getting out of bed, that first kind of roll and transfer. But once I get moving and get the coffee in me and I'm on the way to the gym, I get a smile on my face and I'm get that excitement going to get practice and be with the boys.
And now, as an older athlete, have any of your training routines or your recovery routines had to change over time, in terms of your approach to training in the sport?
Yeah, definitely. I've modified things kind of continuously for sure. Recovery is a huge piece for me now, even more than it was, 4 to 5 years ago. And so stretching and rolling and that sort of thing. So every day when I get home from the gym, I get down on the floor and do, 35, 45 minutes of stretching and rolling. And then first thing in the morning before I go to the gym, I do the same thing, but in like 15, 20-minute bursts, right? And then I got one of those Theraguns that I'm using on myself, and the stick to roll out some muscles, and lacrosse balls to get into some of those activation points. And then cold showers after all the stretching to like flush everything. So all those types of things are part of the recovery. And then on the court, I really focus more on the quality of what I'm doing. And so if I'm going in to shoot and have an hour block for shooting, I'm not going to just shoot around and wheel around kind of, I don't want to say aimlessly, but like without a plan. I'll go in and I'll shoot for 15 minutes and shoot with a lot of focus. And then that'll be my shooting practice, right? And just to keep the wear and tear off of that extra wear and tear off of my shoulders and stuff like that. So get what I need to get done and then kind of recover after that.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, and it just shows all of the little things and the small physical sacrifices that really add up, when you're trying to be a high performance athlete and playing really at the highest level, which you've managed to do for a very long time. You've had a long career. It's continuing from the sounds of it, and you're heading into your fourth games, which is pretty incredible. I mean, that's 12 years on a national team, and for these games in Tokyo, you've got a really unique team where it's about 50-50 between really well-seasoned, experienced players who have been to 2 or 3 Paralympics already, and then another half of the team who's in either their first or their second games. So what's that experience been like for you as an older player working with so many of these young guys who are like in their early to mid 20s and pushing them?
Uh, well, gives me a lot of energy. Most days, definitely some frustrations other days. Yeah, it's great. And the group really even from Lima, but especially since Worlds, has really taken giant steps forward, right? Our depth 1 through 12 is much better now. We got multiple lineups that we're hoping to be able to run for periods of time when we get there. And yeah, so that whole piece of us coming together kind of in this last year and a half and really embracing getting better in the game is pretty special. And I'm feeling really positive about going into these games.
Awesome. Great. Well, I think that wraps up all of my Paralympic related questions and my basketball related questions. I just want to ask you now a bit about your role in the community of wheelchair basketball and wheelchair sports, because one of the really exceptional things about this world is the tendency of athletes at the top to really give back to those lower down the pyramid or the scale, whatever you want to call it. And that's something you've done a really phenomenal job of. I know that whenever you're back in BC and you have time to give back, you'll show up at some of the training camps. You'll take some of the younger players under your wing and help them, give them advice and things. So what's that been like for you, and why is it important to give back?
Well, I think it's none of us would really be where we are right now if someone before us didn't really give back as well. And so I had different athletes do it for me, both provincially and nationally. And so I saw the value in that. And then also, so that in that kind of peer-to-peer mentorship and helping out that way. But then on the organizational thing, I just, BC Wheelchair Basketball and BC Wheelchair Sports played a huge role in getting me from 101 BC to the Paralympics and in that development and that regional development and support. So I just see such a huge value in those organizations being there and being supported and what they can do for obviously kids in the lower mainland, but the regions as well. There's a ton of kids out there that these opportunities need to be there for, and I want to do my best to make sure that they have them.
And so what does it mean to you to see things like, wheelchair basketball continuing to go on in the north, and the program running in Prince George, and then recently they announced that Fort St. John is getting a team again. So what does that mean to you to kind of see that and see that next generation is getting those opportunities?
Oh, it makes me happy for sure. The Styles are doing a great job in northern BC doing and getting those things organized and hitting the road and getting kids active. And so, yeah, it's awesome to see, really. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it, but it makes me happy for sure.
All right, Bo, well, that wraps up all of my questions for you. Now I just want to give you the opportunity to kind of add anything, if you think there's anything we missed that people should know about you or wheelchair basketball, or the team heading into Tokyo. Yeah, the floor is yours.
The only thing is just get out there and watch all the different Paralympic sports. There's a lot of amazing athletes from within Canada, but around the world, and all of the parasport landscape is super competitive right now, and it's the best it's ever been. And so get online, watch the sports, follow along, and support the athletes out there.
Cool. So now all of the wheelchair basketball games will be broadcast on CBC Sports this year. So definitely bookmark cbcsports.ca. Head over there for when the Paralympic Games start. The Paralympics start on August 24th and run through September 6th. I might be around there, but yeah. So definitely check that out and tune into the games. Thank you so much, Bo. I really appreciate you giving me some of your time and sharing some of your experiences with us today. I wish you and the team the best of luck in Tokyo. I think it'll be a phenomenal wheelchair basketball competition. Like you said, with all of the depth of the field and a ton of competitive games. So definitely looking forward to cheering you guys on.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks for having me today.
No worries. Bye now.